Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Spurs Dive. I am joined by Chris, first time on the show. I'm so happy to get him on the show. How are you doing, Chris? Hope you are well.
I am well. Thank you, Josh, for having me. And it's an absolute pleasure being here with you, man.
No worries, no worries. Well, look, today's video is going to be very interesting. We're going to be talking about midfielders, who should start versus Newcastle. Should we be playing a more defensive midfield, more attacking midfield? Let's just get straight into it. So this midfield, we've been struggling a lot going forward, defending, really controlling the midfield of Tottenham Hotspur. Who would you
Yeah.
start versus Newcastle, and why would you start those players?
Right. Good question. And thanks for that. I think that we shouldn't be changing depending on who we play, right?
Hmm.
Because we have an identity, we have a style already, right?
Yeah,
So it doesn't matter who we play. That's what we have to do. Ange has been very critical about, criticised, excuse me, for being gung ho. He never changes. He shouldn't have to change. A manager has his preset ways of playing. That is his style. Uh, Tactically is another thing, but taking into consideration current form, um, religious aspects of the current calendar year, Ramadan, these things, are players like Sarr and Biss suffering because of these aspects, which are totally respectable and many players go through. We're going to have to change. So I would rest Bissouma under these possible reasons and under current form as well. I thought that he was great in the first 20 minutes against Forest on Sunday, but struggled in the latter half of the first half. I don't know if that was a physical or mental collapse. It was an implosion that let Forest into the game, but
yeah.
I would need to shore that midfield up, and I'm thinking definitely Bentancur. Um, definitely needs a change. Whether Sarr it needs to be taken off for someone like Pierre Emile Hojbjerg, I'm not a big fan of his, but it could be a possibility as well to rest those two players, obviously affected by their religious belief, their own personal and religious beliefs.
Yeah.
I would start changing with Bentancur for a start.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think versus Newcastle, it's like what you said there. To be completely honest with you, um, I didn't actually think about this in terms of Tottenham need to keep with their way. I from the beginning of the season kept on saying that Tottenham should change their midfield based on other teams, but I completely understand your point in terms of Tottenham need have their own way and need to go with their own way. But
Mm.
a little bit of a different question here, though. If we're playing a defensive Newcastle team, I know this is it's not really going to happen. I doubt it. But if we play a very defensive Newcastle team, do you not think that maybe we could do with two holding midfielders, or is that a bit too much in terms of having Biss and Hojbjerg, or do you think that Bentancur is very important, or Bentancur and Sarr, one of them is very important in the team?
Well, basically, Ange sets up um, de facto a 4-2-3-1.
Hmm.
Okay. So if we want to get technical about it, and as a coach myself, which I don't brag about, I don't want to do that, but as a
Yeah.
coach, I can technically talk about and tactically talk about that. We start a 4-2-3-1 with our famous and controversial inverted fullbacks. That leaves us with two central defenders,
Hmm.
two holding midfielders, right in front of them, and our inverted fullbacks go straight into the like inside left and inside right.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have two holding midfielders anyway, but it depends on the press. Now I said before the style is the style, right?
Hmm.
But tactically you have to change slightly. Now if the two, depending on how many attackers press your defense, right? Normally Bissouma on a regular basis will be the sole number six, if you want to
Yeah.
call him that, freeing up Sarr, who would go to the wing. or whoever's playing in that role. But
Hmm.
if the press is different, you're still going to have those two. So
Yeah.
that is that is the tactical changes, right? That Ange does actually implement, regardless of, or sorry, despite a lot of fans' criticism of Ange that he doesn't do things in game and his in-game management is bad. No, tactically he does make those changes. You just have to
Be
look at
aware
it,
of it.
you know, yeah, we have to be aware of it and be aware that he does have these triggers. If two players come up, we have to do this. If one player come up, we have to. So he does. So, but as I said, the style is unnegotiable.
I'll be honest. For me, the number six role is more of a I know this is obvious, but a six role for me is more defensive than attacking. In terms of, I have a lot of I put a lot of pressure on my number six, whether it's Bissouma and Hojbjerg, to be a more of a defensive unit than to help the attack. Now, I want to get your thoughts on one of the goals that happened versus Forest, or the goal that happened versus Forest, where there was a little bit of debate in terms of me and my mates. So Bissouma for that goal, in general for me, when two of my fullbacks, Udogi and Poro, go forward, they interact, they go with the midfielders. It leaves Mickey van der Ven and Romero isolated at the back. So in that circumstance, I believe that Bissouma or Hojbjerg, whoever the six is, should slot in as a third centre back ish. But for that goal that Forest scored, it looked like Udogi was caught out position, and then Bissouma was not nowhere near his man. That, in my opinion, was the reason they scored the goal. Now, what did you think from that number six performance? I know you said Bissouma had a good first 20 minutes. What did you think
Yeah.
though overall in that sixth position?
Regarding the sixth position per se, I tend to like, but in general, I tend to
Yeah,
like my number six as a unique six, as a like playing on his own
yeah,
with two in front. Right, I don't like a double pivot. I never have.
hmm,
I come from the Barcelona school of football because I like Barcelona and Spurs, as many know, from 1983. I've been
yeah,
fans for both for that long. So my school of football brain and seeing things is totally different to how Ange plays in that sense.
yeah.
Two holding midfielders, or one sweeps up and the other is the more creative. I tend to like the Busquets, the Guardiola, the single who does
Isolated
things
one.
differently. Yeah, exactly. Isolated. Yeah. Um, and you have others that are more creative and do other things as well. In this sense, the blame is not so much on Bissouma defensively, although everyone is to blame, but is more on Udogi for not closing down your man, because
Yeah,
it all comes from him. It was
yeah,
Morgan White Gibbs, if I'm not mistaken.
hmm,
He let Morgan White Gibbs away too quickly instead of, like, if this is Udogi and this is Morgan White Gibbs, he should have been onto him far, 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 stronger and onto. He gave him too much space,
yeah.
and he just played off him and he went into the space. And who is going to predict that? You're expecting your man to close down that space, go into the back of him, clatter him, take him down, get a yellow card if you haven't got one previously, go into the back of him. But you can't foresee, unless you're special, what's going to happen if you do, if you don't. I mean, it's split
Yeah.
second. He tracked back. He got into. I mean, your doggy tracked back, but Gibbs White was gone. Um, what can you do? I mean, very, very difficult.
No,
Um,
I understand your point. I understand your point. It's similar to what I think. The whole thing for me is mainly to blame for Udogi for coming out of position. But I just feel like Basuma personally should be there, just to mop up a little bit. But there was another situation as well on that right hand side with Pedro Porro, where he cut in, where his man cut in, and Porro just continued to follow him. But what that causes, it causes the whole defense to shift, and now someone has to go cover Porro, because Porro's now playing as like a Basuma, because he's now coming inside and that CDM role.
yeah,
But look, overall, so your three midfielders for Newcastle is as follows. Who would you say?
I would say Maddison, Bentancur, and if Sarr is feeling okay, he's the one that's inspiring me more or most over him and Bissouma of late. So I'd have Sarr, Maddison, and Bentancur.
Sorry,
Definitely, yeah.
one last question. Do you think that uh, do you see Hojbjerg as a more defensive player than Bentancur or not?
On a physical level, yes. On a
Yeah,
mental level, Bentancur can do both because he's a reader of the game. He's able to do that. He's mentally more prepared,
yeah,
and he's capable of sustaining the attack more because he's smart. He's a smarter footballer. A lot of people use the term very loosely. Hey, he's a better footballer. So and so is a better footballer. But it depends on what is required of you, and depending on that requirement, you do it better than because
yeah,
you're more equipped. You're either physically more equipped, or you're mentally more equipped, or you're technically more equipped. Whatever. I think Bentancur is a much more complete player. If you want to, use that kind of word or description, is more complete. So, but as I said before, if you're using a two-man holding midfield, Bentancur would be the creator, and
mhm,
Hojbjerg would be the one that does the dirty work.
yeah,
Okay, but
yeah,
but that doesn't mean that Bentancur can't do the dirty work because he likes to get stuck in. He's a Uruguayan. He has that nasty streak. He has that. If I have to get stuck in, I will get stuck in. But of the two, Hojbjerg, because he's not that creative, because he's not that. I don't believe him to have that creative output
mhm,
mentally,
yeah,
and he's not the read. He hasn't got that reading of the game, in my opinion. He has to be the one that does the dirty work over Bentancur, and
yeah,
Bentancur is the one that creates. And I'm not sure if you saw it, Josh. There was an instance, I think it was in the first half, or it could have been where the cameras were panning in on the game. I think it was a throw in, and it was actually Bentancur who was actually I think it was in his tracksuit or it was in his jacket,
yeah,
and he was actually signalling, who should go where, and
mhm,
he was signaling to people where to stand or where to run or where to hold, and I mean that just shows that's just evidence of how he reads the game, and he was
yeah.
on the subs bench, so I think he's probably warming up or whatever, but that's how that's his mentality, that's the fire inside him,
But
and
that,
if
but
he's not content,
that's
he,
what's
he
good
can't
from
keep quiet.
Ange. Yeah, but that's what's good
Yeah.
from Ange, in my opinion. That he he
Okay.
he doesn't. Unfortunately for us, we don't have an aggressive player like Rodri and someone who can maneuver the ball like Rodri does.
Mm,
Rodri does the dirty work, but he's also brilliant at going forward. Unfortunately, we don't have that, and there's very limited players in the world who can do that. So I'm saying
mm,
it was a good substitution from Ange to bring on Hojbjerg, a very, very strong defensive unit, but then to bring on
mm,
Bentancur, who has the mindset and the ability to
mm.
maneuver the ball to the attackers and to create stuff. But look, lads, this has been myself and Chris on the Spurs Live Show. If you want to check out more from Chris, make sure to go subscribe to his YouTube channel, Meta Football TV. Chris, thanks so much for joining. Very much appreciate it. And come on, you Spurs. Bye bye.
How many Spurs?